Culture has many definitions, but is in general the beliefs, actions, and values of a people. There are many concepts, like language, culture regions, and customs, which are important to both pop and local culture. Culture's roots can also be defined by cultural hearths, and there are 5 major cultural hearths throughout the world, but each individual culture has its own specific roots.
Culture used hierarchical diffusion, contagious diffusion, stimulus diffusion, and relocation diffusion to diffuse from its heart or origin into the periphery. Hierarchical diffusion involves an idea spreading from a higher class in society to a lower class. Contagious diffusion is the spread of culture from person to person to person, continuing the chain. Stimulus diffusion is the adaptation of a cultural trait that is introduced from another place. Relocation diffusion is when people migrate, they take their current culture with them and begin to diffuse into the new area.
Cultural hearth is the place of origin of a major culture. Major cultural hearths of the world include the Fertile Crescent, India, the Yellow River Valley, West Africa, Mesoamerica, and South America. Culture and ideas then diffuse through trade, travel, or immigration.
Cultural identity is how one defines his or own cultural group and is usually influenced by their home and surrounding community. Language, dress, religion, and viewpoints are all items that make up cultural identity.
There are an abundance of topics associated with culture. Among them are popular and local culture, the types of diffusion, the core versus periphery concept, and cultural hearths. Ideas associated with culture often deal with how different cultures are defined, how they spread, and which elements of a culture are significant.
Culture has a large effect on the environment of the region. The way the environment is shaped by the culture shows how they are organized, took resources, and how they lived. An example is the last one listed. As an example, housing shows how people dealt with climate, geographical, and or economic variables.
Cultural landscape is the visible imprint of human activity and culture on the landscape. The layers of buildings, forms, and artifacts sequentially imprinted on the landscape by the activities of various human occupants. An example of cultural landscape would be trees being cut down to establish buildings or houses.
Popular culture is cultural traits such as dress, diet, and music that identify and are part of today's changeable, urban-based, media-influenced Western societies. Folk culture is cultural traits such as dress modes, dwellings, traditions, and institutions of usually small traditional communities.
Folk culture architecture is based on the environment and adapts to the physical features of the land. For example, many houses are built along or into hillsides, whereas pop culture architecture defies the landscape. For example, today we have many skyscrapers. In pop architecture, we can clear land in order to construct buildings.
Culture defines many different regions around the world. Cultural regions can also be defined using formal regions, which are set areas like the town of Cary. Also, cultural regions are made up of functional regions, an example being a city and its suburbs, and finally a vernacular or perpetual region is a region that is defined in a person's mind but is not officially recognized region. An example of a perpetual region would be South or Midwest.
Material culture refers to the part of culture that is tangible, such as art, housing, dress, sports, dance, and food. Non-material culture, however, is based on intangible parts of the culture like beliefs, practices, and values of a cultural group.
Spoken languages are in every known human group, and language creation can often be related to migration and isolation. Language is categorized by language family, language branch, language group, language, dialect, and accent. The diffusion of language is often through relocation diffusion. Pidgin language is where someone with a limited understanding of a language uses simplified grammar and vocabulary of the lingua franca, or common language, to communicate. A Creole language is the mixture of a colonizer's language with another, which is generally the native language.
A standard language is the variant of a language that a country's political and intellectual elite seek to promote as the norm for use in schools, government, the media, and other aspects of public life. Variants of standard language along regional or ethnic lines are called dialects.
Bibliography.